Mark chapter 8, verses 27 through 38. Jesus and his disciples went on to the villages around Caesarea Philippi. And on the way he asked them, "Who do people say I am?" They replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others one of the prophets." "But what about you?" he asked. "Who do you say that I am?" And Peter answered, "You are the Messiah." And Jesus warned them not to tell anyone about him. He then began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, that he must be killed, and after 3 days rise again. He spoke plainly about this, and Peter took him aside and he began to rebuke him. But when Jesus turned and looked at his disciples, he rebuked Peter. "Get behind me, Satan," he said. "You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." Then he called the crowd to him along with his disciples and said, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it. But whoever loses their life for me and for the gospel will save it. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? Or what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? If anyone is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, the Son of Man will be ashamed of them when he comes in his Father's glory with the holy angels." This is the word of God for the people of God. At the opening of our gospel reading today, we find Jesus asking his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" The response that the disciples give show that the people that day were pretty unsure of who Jesus truly was. Throughout the Gospels, we see that they even had no idea of who Jesus was or any realistic idea about what he was doing or his purpose or what it meant to follow him. From the outside looking in, many of Jesus' followers saw only glamour. Jesus is healing people and raising the dead. They saw notoriety. No one teaches like Jesus. Look how upset the Pharisees are getting. They saw excitement. What do you think he'll do next? They saw power by association. People will know how important I am when they see that I am hanging out with him. They saw connection. Think of the significant people that I might meet in these crowds. And they saw business opportunities. Think of the money to be made on the movie rights and the books. But we find the same confusion going on today. Even inside the crowded corridors of the church world, people are still struggling with who Jesus is and what it means to follow him. And yet Jesus warned, "If anyone wants to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me." So we're left with a choice. We can choose to either follow the easy path, follow the world, or we can follow the harder path, the path of Jesus. I think Robert Frost put it best when he wrote, "Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both, and be one traveler, long I stood, and looked down as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as far that the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay, and leaves no step had trodden back. Oh, I kept the first for another day. Yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. This less traveled road can be the more difficult road, but at the same time it can be the most wondrous road. The less traveled road can be filled with a wonder as only few have ever seen. No one has seen that path. The less traveled road can be filled with excitement as the unexpected can lie just beyond each bend. Normally when I'm traveling somewhere, when I'm going either down to Delaware or Dayton, instead of taking the highway and the fast, easy way there, I usually punch into the GPS the back way. It may take me a little longer, but I get to see so many things that you don't see zipping by at 70 miles an hour on the highway. And here in our gospel, Jesus is talking about this less traveled road. Jesus begins teaching the disciples about what is going to happen next in his ministry. He tells the disciples that the Son of Man, Jesus himself, must suffer many things. He must be rejected by all the religious rulers, and then die, and then rise again on the third day. This was the less traveled road of the cross, of suffering, of dying. And then Peter stopped Jesus in his tracks and said, "Wait a minute, this can't be right. You can't be telling us that this is the way of God. This can't happen, not if I have anything to do about it. This will not happen to you." See, Peter loved Jesus, but he could not understand that the untraveled road that Jesus was to embark on. He couldn't understand that suffering and being the suffering servant was the way of Jesus. For the road that Peter traveled, and he wanted Jesus to travel along also, was the road of glory, the road of success, the road of power and might. Jesus was supposed to be the conquering Messiah, not a dead one. And then just as Peter is trying to understand this, Jesus turns to all of them and says, "If any man would come after me, let them deny themselves and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it. And whoever loses his life for my sake and for the gospel will save it." Jesus is telling the disciples that now they have to travel that less traveled road, that road of sacrifice and the cross, and bearing that cross. Jesus is telling them to leave that worn path of success, of power, of prestige, of glory, and to follow that path of sacrifice, of losing oneself to Jesus. Jesus is asking the disciples to lose their lives in him, and in that they will find their lives. This takes us to the root of discipleship. It shows what it really means to be a follower of Christ. To follow Jesus requires self-denial and taking up the cross. Now, self-denial here doesn't mean, as often is practiced around Lent, of abstaining from the pleasures of life. It means making the decision that you will not be the master of your own existence, but that Jesus and his mission will drive your actions. When Jesus said, "Let them deny themselves," He is saying that we as his followers must be willing to give up all the things that we thought were important. God gave us life to spend and not to keep. If we live always thinking of our own gain, our own ease, our comfort, our security, if our single aim is to make life as long and trouble-free as possible, if we make no effort for anyone except for ourselves, we are losing life all the time, and not in a good way. But if we live for others, if we forget wealth and comfort in order to do something great for Jesus and for others, then we are winning at life all the time. Today's gospel reading goes to the core question of the life that we are meant to live. Are you a Christ follower? No doubt most of you in the congregation will identify yourself as such. But this week, I want you to think about this question. Do you identify yourself as a Christ follower? What does that really mean to you? Why are you a Christian? Why do you want to be a follower of Jesus? Who do you say that he is? These kinds of questions provide an opportunity to face the heart of discipleship. In our desire to find the life for which our hearts long, are we willing to go the way of the cross in order to find it? Another way to ask the question might be, are you dying to live? The message from the gospel today is that one cannot be a follower of Jesus, cannot truly be a disciple, unless one takes seriously the implications of the cross. This is where the life you were meant to live begins and ends. God gave us life to spend, not to keep. If we live carefully, always thinking first of our own profit, our ease, our comfort, our security, if our sole aim is to make life as long and as trouble-free as possible, if we'll make no effort except for ourselves, we're losing life all the time. But if we spend life for others, if we forget health and time and wealth and comfort in our desire to do something for Jesus and for the people for whom Jesus died, we are winning life all the time. Fred Craddock says it this way. He says, we think giving our all to the Lord is like taking out a $1,000 bill, laying it down on the table and saying, here's my life, Lord. I'm giving it all. The reality for most of us is that God sends us to the bank and has us cash in that $1,000 bill for quarters. And we go through life putting out 25 cents here and 50 cents there. Giving our life to Christ isn't glamorous. It's done in all those little acts of love, 25 cents at a time. God gave us our life to spend, not to keep. The very essence of life is in risking life and spending life, not in saving it and hoarding it. Jesus wants us to lose our lives in him, and in so doing, he'll give us new life. We are given a new life in Christ. So what is this new life like? It is a life of self-sacrifice, a life of giving to others, a life of putting my needs second to the needs of the suffering in this world. A new life in Christ is not an easy road to follow. So, which road will you choose in the path of life? The road that so many today want, or the road that Jesus taught us in today's gospel lesson? my hope is that you'll be able to say, two roads diverge in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Amen. Would you please